to Empower Your Thinking, the podcast that inspires and fuels your journey to unlocking your full potential. Join host C.T. Johnson on the voyage of self-discovery as he uncovers the keys to a more empowered and fulfilled life. Tune in and elevate your thinking today.
Hello, Cerebral citizens. Welcome to the Empower Your Thinking podcast with yours truly, C.T. Johnson. Thank you so very much for joining me on this journey of self-discovery as we uncover the keys to a more empowered and fulfilled life. If this podcast is making a difference in how you think and how you live, won't you do me this favor? Subscribe, rate, and share the podcast and this episode with someone who's on a journey of growth just like you. Also, follow me on Instagram and subscribe to my YouTube channel, I Empower Lives, for weekly insights, updates, and exclusive content. We're having a blast on social media, so come on over to IG, come on over to YouTube, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so you'll never miss when we go live or content is uploaded. I Empower Lives. That's our IG handle as well as our YouTube channel. Come on over and let's be empowered together. Well, today's episode is personal. That's right. It's a personal episode. I'm excited about this opportunity to share with you regarding my 23 years of service to the best branch there is. And that's the United States Air Force. That's right. We aim high because God is high and lifted up. That's right. He sits high and he looks low. Glory to God. So the Air Force is the branch of service for the saved, the redeemed, and the sanctified. Amen. Those of you whom have also served in the United States military, I salute you and I honor you for your service. Of course, we know that every service member deems their branch the better branch, whether you're Air Force, Army, Marines, Navy, Coast Guard, or now Space Force. And so that's just how we do. We enjoy friendly banter among our brothers and sisters we enjoy the banter among our sister service. And so it's all in fun. It's all in fun. But today I'm going to share with you six leadership lessons from my 23 years of service to the United States Air Force. This is going to give insight beyond the profit. This is going to give you greater understanding as it pertains to who I am as a person, giving you a more holistic view of yours truly. But I know that if you stick with me and if you follow me today, you're going to be, of course, empowered and provoked to another dimension, not limited to a level, but another dimension of cerebral functioning where leadership is concerned. So let's jump into it. All right. Allow me just a few moments to set the stage, to give you somewhat of an historical backdrop pertaining to my military career. So in October of 2000, October 17, to be exact, in the year of 2000, I entered into the Air Force and retired from the Air Force November 30th, 2023. My first 3 years, ironically, I was in civil engineering. My first duty station was Hickam Air Force Base, Hawaii. That's right. I said, Lord, here I am. Send me. And I sacrificed, but God was glorified. I went to Hickam Air Force Base, Hawaii, which was my first duty station. And my initial career field was that of civil engineering. So for those of you who have no idea of what that career field entails, I operated heavy equipment. That's right. The prophet, the bougie person that I am, was instructed by God to go into civil engineering, and then I would later cross train. So I operated heavy equipment. I operated dozers, loaders, backhoes, excavators, dump trucks, all of that good stuff. I paved roads. I laid asphalt. I laid concrete. I erected fences, chain link fences, shadow box fences. That's what I did. And so after 3 years of doing that, I cross-trained in 2003 into what the Air Force calls personnel. On the civilian side, it's known as human resources. And that's where I began to manage people and personnel operations. Then in 2010, I was selected for a special duty assignment as an Air Force Reserve recruiter, where I served for 3 years, helping bring new airmen into military service, which I thoroughly enjoyed. In 2013, I returned to human resources and served as the executive assistant to the commander of Air Force Reserve Recruiting Service at Air Force Reserve headquarters until 2020. And then my final assignment before retiring was at Air Force Reserve Command at Buckley, then Air Force, now Space Force Base in Colorado as a requirements analyst. I retired as a Master Sergeant in E7, and throughout my career, I managed teams, operations, and logistics, sometimes leading small teams, anywhere between 1 to 5 people. So over those 23 years, the Air Force taught me many things, as you can imagine, about leadership that apply far beyond the military. And so I just wanted to give you a synopsis of my military history, my military background. Of course, it's more in depth, more detailed, but we don't have all day. And so just wanted to help shape and frame our conversation on today as we dig into 6 leadership lessons from my 23 years of Air Force service. So let's get into it. Lesson 1, as it pertains to leadership lessons. Leadership requires awareness. Leadership acquires awareness. That's point 1. That's lesson 1. One of my earliest leadership lessons, catch this, came through failure. Failure, not success, not achievement, not accomplishment, but one of my greatest leadership lessons actually came through failure. Now, here's story time. During my first enlistment while working in civil engineering, remember I told you that was my actual first initial career field, I was assigned to operate a runway sweeper, which was a part of our weekly, actually daily responsibility in our career field. We were responsible to go out to the flight line and ensure that the flight line was free of FOD, F-O-D, FOD, which stands for foreign object debris. So my responsibility was to ensure that the runway, the taxiway for the aircraft to take off and to land was free of debris, free of FOD, because if any FOD was found on the flight line, on the taxiway, the airplane could suffer great damage if anything entered into the propellers and things of that nature. So that was my responsibility, to ensure aircraft could safely operate. This particular day, I was focused on my task, doing exactly what I had been trained to do. But at one point, I looked in my rearview mirror and realized that a 747 aircraft, is it 747, 757? I'm not an aircraft expert. Huge aircraft was in my rear view mirror, and it was trying to take off, but I was still on the runway sweeping, and I was in its path. I was prohibiting the aircraft from taking off. Now, my radio was going off, but I had PPE, which is protective equipment. I had earplugs in. I was operating the sweeper, which has an engine for the actual vehicle, and then there's an engine for what's called the hopper that sucks up the debris and all of that off of the flight line. And so I had two engines going. I had earplugs in, and so I was not paying attention to what was being said on the radio. I just thought it was talk and discussion on that particular channel. Didn't realize that the tower was radioing me to get out of the way of the aircraft. So here is the point of the story. My lack of situational awareness delayed the aircraft's departure. Now, thankfully, nothing catastrophic happened, but that moment taught me something critical. Leadership requires awareness beyond the task in front of you. When you become so consumed with your immediate assignment that you ignore what is happening around you, you ignore what's transpiring within your peripheral, you risk interfering with the larger mission. My mistake affected more than just me. I was not the only person or individual that was affected by my inability to hone in on not just my specific task, but to monitor what was happening around me, monitoring my peripheral, ensuring that I was aware of all things that were transpiring in my proximity. I delayed the schedule of others and disrupted operations. From that moment forward, I learned that leaders must develop the discipline to remain aware of the broader environment. What you do, catch this, what you do impacts more than just you. If you're going to be an effective leader, you have to be cognizant of the situations that are occurring around you. Situational awareness is key for effective leadership. Lesson 2, point 2. Leadership requires emotional discipline. You can't be all over the place. You can't be emotionally unstable when you step into leadership. One of the hardest leadership lessons I learned throughout my career was learning to discipline my mouth and my emotions. You must discipline your mouth and your emotions, because what emotionally wise, or what you fail to rein in where your emotions are concerned, eventually is expressed by way of your words, what you say. Your mouth and your emotions are tied and connected. Sooner or later, if you don't learn how to discipline emotions, how not to allow your emotions to dictate or influence your decisions, what's in your heart or what you're harboring and are failing to control where your emotions are concerned, your mouth will sooner or later display your emotions. This is why emotional intelligence, and I mentioned this not too long ago, emotional intelligence is key. Leadership is not about reacting to how you feel in the moment. Leaders must learn how to manage their emotions so that their decisions are guided by wisdom and responsibility rather than impulse. There were moments in my career where decisions had to be made that were not comfortable and not always popular. You have to understand that. Being in leadership requires you to make decisions that aren't always comfortable. They aren't always favorable. They won't always be popular among those that you lead. But leadership cannot be governed by emotion alone. Now that's the key. Emotions are involved in our daily lives, routine. You can't be a human void of emotions. Emotions are a part of the human experience. It's a part of the human construct. It's a part of the human composition. It's a part of the human constitution. However, the issue is when we are solely governed by our feelings and our emotions. Another thing I learned is that leadership is not about protecting your reputation, or advancing your career. Leadership is about serving the people entrusted to you. When you lead, the focus shifts from yourself to the people you are responsible for guiding. This is why, again, emotional intelligence is key. You cannot be so engulfed, so involved in how to advance, move, or progress your career. Not when you enter into a certain tier or a certain level of leadership. The focus shifts from you and you alone to those now that you are stewards over. You in leadership, you are the steward of their destiny. You are the steward of their purpose. You are the steward of their career. And so this is why to be an effective leader, you have to learn how to manage your emotions and not your emotions manage you. All right. So lesson 3, leaders set the culture. Leaders set the culture. Another principle that I learned over time is that leaders are culture setters, not culture settlers. Did you catch that? Leaders set the culture. They're culture setters, not culture settlers. They don't settle with what the culture has established. They actually set the culture. Leaders set the culture. The culture should not set the leader. If a leader allows the environment to dictate their standards, their discipline begins to erode. I want you to write that down. Take a mental note of that. If a leader allows the environment to dictate their standards, discipline begins to erode. Leadership establish expectations through 1, consistency, 2, communication, and thirdly, accountability. How a leader responds to pressure is how they handle conflict and how they treat people all contribute to the culture of the environment they lead. Don't miss that. How a leader responds to pressure how they handle conflict, and how they treat people all contribute to the culture of the environment they lead. I also learned something just as equally important about the relationship between leadership and followership. And that is, followership qualifies for leadership. Did you catch that? Followership qualifies for leadership. You are not qualified to lead if you are not a good follower. If you aren't consistent in followership. Every leader has someone that they follow. Mentor, supervisor. You don't enter into leadership without having passed the test of followership. And catch this, once you are promoted into the various tiers of leadership, does not exempt you from that point on from some level or aspect of followership. Because every leader should have a mentor. Every leader should still be submitted to a coach, to a supervisor. So even though you have now promoted from solely followership to certain aspects of leadership, there is still a component of followership that works in tandem with leadership. Okay? The relationship between leadership and followership is continual. The relationship between leadership and followership is continual. Followership qualifies for leadership. Before anyone becomes an effective leader, they must first learn how to follow. If you've not mastered followership, if you have not served someone else, if you have not served someone else's purpose, if you have not served another person's endeavors, if you have not assisted in bringing another vision to reality, then you can't expect someone to serve, to assist, to collaborate, to help you in bringing your vision into reality, fulfilling your mission. You have to first sow the servitude of followership in order to reap the harvest of leadership. Oh, that's good. You first must sow the seeds of servitude. You first must sow the seeds of followership in order to reap the harvest of leadership. Every great leader began as someone who understood the value of discipline, obedience, and responsibility. And that's what followership, that's what serving someone else teaches you. That's what it establishes within you. That's what it installs within you, within the realm, or that's what's installed as it pertains to the components of character: discipline, obedience, responsibility. Discipline, obedience, responsibility. That's those components, those elements of character are installed and developed in service, servitude, followership. All right. So now, before we move into lesson 4, let's recap very briefly. Today, we're dealing with 6 lessons of leadership that I've learned through 23 years of military service. In lesson 1, we talked about how leadership requires awareness. Lesson 2, leadership requires emotional discipline. Lesson 3, leaders set the culture. And now lesson 4, understanding people. Working in HR, human resources, and recruiting taught me an important lesson about people, one that is unfortunately overlooked. And that is, people can be influenced by emotions, assumptions, and perceptions. I want you to hear this. We are influenced emotionally, we're influenced by way of assumptions, and we're influenced by way of perception. So when you understand these elements in which people are influenced, you then appreciate the significance and the importance of clarity. When you're leading, when you are stewarding the mission, the destiny, the purpose, the assignment, you must ensure clarity is always established. Following your directives, following your instructions, following the disclosure of the mission. When clarity is absent, confusion spreads quickly. I want you to take note of that. When clarity is absent, confusion and chaos spreads quickly. Chaos and confusion provides opportunity for mission mismanagement. It provides opportunity for the mission to be aborted, for it to be redirected, for it to be derailed. Okay. So clarity is crucial. Clarity is crucial. And again, we have to understand the dichotomy of the human experience. And that is how we are influenced by way of emotions, assumptions, and perceptions. And so what stabilizes those that you lead, and even what protects those that you lead from being influenced emotionally by assumptions or perception, is facts, data, and information. That's what stabilizes your group. That's what stabilizes your team. That's what also provides for cohesiveness, for unity, for oneness. That is ensuring that the facts have been laid out, the data, the statistical information has been provided in order for there to be stabilization, equilibrium, where people's emotions, assumptions, and perceptions are concerned. All right. Good leaders always provide clarity. Good leaders always provide clarity. Once again, good leaders always provide clarity. When people understand the situation and the reasoning behind decisions, they operate with greater confidence and stability. Oh, that's good. I need you to understand that. When comprehension is attached to the situation, when understanding is there, when the reason is known behind the decision made, now your team can operate with confidence, and they operate without confusion, cloudiness, distortion of thought. Clarity removes uncertainty and it strengthens trust. Oh, isn't that good? Yeah. Clarity removes uncertainty and strengthens trust. This is why Satan does his best work in confusion. He does his best work when things are unaligned, when things are in disarray. He moves masterfully where confusion, chaos, and division is, because strength is absent. All right. Now you're vulnerable. Your team is vulnerable. Trust is not there. So now everyone is looking side-eyed at the leader. They're looking side-eyed at their team members, because where clarity is absent, uncertainty is present. But where clarity resides, confidence is there and trust is there, and uncertainty is removed. Now, lesson 5. Discipline is painful. Oh my God. Can you relate? Discipline is painful, but powerful. Now, I think lesson 5 might be one of my favorite, or I should say lesson 5, one of my most valuable lessons. Discipline is painful, but powerful. This, again, is a major leadership lesson that you must master. You must master this if you're going to be a leader of excellence. And that is, discipline must be intentionally developed. Discipline must be intentionally developed. Discipline is not something that happens accidentally. I can't pronounce my words here. Discipline is not something that happens accidentally. Accidentally. There we go. Accidentally. Try saying that 3 times. Once again, discipline is not something that happens accidentally, but it is intentional. It requires effort, consistency, and willingness to endure discomfort. Discomfort accompanies discipline. Ask anyone who is a aerobics instructor, is a wellness coach, a fitness coach. Discomfort accompanies discipline. You must be willing to pay the cost of discipline. This is where a lot of people fail regarding leadership. And this is a lesson that is apropos if you're going, this is a foundational lesson of leadership. This lesson is paramount. This is leadership 101. And that is understanding the pain of discipline, the discomfort of discipline, but yet it's powerful because of the rewards that it yields, not only for you, the leader, but for those who you lead. Discipline demands structure. It demands sacrifice. It demands accountability. While it may not always be popular, and trust me, it's not, it is incredibly powerful when mastered. And that is key. You have to master the art of discipline. That's how I love to define discipline. It's an art that you have to master. And when you master the art of discipline, then it produces reliability. People know disciplined persons are reliable people. They are persons that aren't fickle. They aren't wishy-washy. They aren't fly-by-nighters. They're constant. They're stable. Okay. So discipline produces reliability. It produces consistency, and it produces results. Discipline produces results. It produces a product. It produces something that's lasting. It produces something that is generational, that can be used in the future. And it takes a person of discipline to harness and manage their emotions, their feelings, not taking things personal, understanding that there is a greater picture to all that it is you may be dealing with, experiencing. So discipline is painful, but it is powerful. And lastly, the last and sixth lesson that I gained from my experience in military service is the mission comes first. The mission comes first. One of the most important principles of military leadership is mission priority. And for those of you listening who have served not only in the military, but if you have served in any area of civil service, law enforcement, first responders, fire department, firefighters, things of that nature, you also can relate to this principle. And that is, the mission is priority. The mission always comes first, before comfort, before convenience or personal preference. Mission-oriented thinking brings clarity to decision making. This is where many leaders fall short, because they put comfort before the mission. They put their desires and their wants and their passions before the mission, their preference before the mission. But you have to understand that the mission is number one. It's the main thing. So you must remain mission oriented in your thinking. When the mission is clear, leaders understand what must be done and what must be sacrificed to accomplish it. The principle extends beyond military, as I aforementioned, first responders, or really, regardless of your profession, regardless of your field, you have a specific mission. There is a specific purpose as it pertains to what you are responsible to facilitate and or to bring about. So in life, when purpose becomes the priority, distractions lose their influence. So you must hone in on the purpose of your assignment, the purpose of your call, the purpose of your duty, responsibility. All right. So those are the 6 lessons, that I learned in my years of service, that I learned as a leader in the United States military. Again, lesson 1, leadership requires awareness. Lesson 2, leadership requires emotional discipline. Lesson 3, leaders set the culture. Lesson 4, understanding people. Lesson 5, discipline is painful but powerful. And lesson 6, the mission comes first. Now I want to share with you a proud moment for me where leadership was concerned. One of the most absolute proudest moments of my career happened years after I served as a recruiter. I spent the first 6 years of my military service as an active duty Air Force member. Then I went Air Force Reserve. And then from there, I went what we call, what's the term that's trying to escape me? I went AGR. I went AGR, which stands for Active Guard Reserve. For those of you who are familiar with that, with those military terms and terminology, you understand. But total of service, 23 years, and I did receive an active duty retirement. But my point is this: during my recruiting assignment, I enlisted a young woman into the Air Force Reserve shortly after she had graduated from college. Over the years, after she entered into the military, went to basic training, went to tech school, and came back home because she initially was Air Force Reserve and started serving her 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, started developing, building her military career. over the years, we remain in contact, and she would call me, hit me up, message me on social media, text, call, all of those things as it pertains to advice and mentorship. And so I mentored her throughout her career as an enlisted member. And then she decided she wanted to commission and become an officer. And so we talked through all of that. And then later she decided she wanted to go to law school and become a lawyer and all of that. So over the years, off and on, I would mentor her, talk with her and advise her, pray with her, definitely pray with her and seek God's mind for her life. And years later, she commissioned and became a judge advocate, general officer, which in short, JAG. She became a JAG officer. And years later, when I retired from the Air Force, guess what? She officiated my retirement ceremony. She was the officer that officiated and presided over my retirement ceremony. Think about that. I want you to think about this. 10 years earlier, 10 years prior to me retiring, I helped begin her military career. And then 10 years later, she stood as the officiating officer to retire me, to culminate my career. I began hers and she culminated mine. It was a powerful reminder that leadership is not just about what you accomplish personally. Hear me. It is also about the people you help develop along the way. Never did I think one, and that's just one story. I have many stories of young men and women that God graced me and afforded me the opportunity to help steward and guide their lives and careers. Another young man, he is now a police officer in the Maryland Police Department in, I believe, Upper Marlboro, Maryland, married, 2 wonderful kids, wonderful wife, and the young lady that I just mentioned who officiated my retirement ceremony, married, wonderful son. Actually, just spoke with her today, and she is PCSing to another duty station in Little Rock. And so I'm so proud of her, so proud of all the others. But again, this is what leadership is about. It's not about your personal accomplishments. It's about the people you help develop along the way. And note that leadership applies to everyone. One of the biggest misconceptions about leadership is that it only applies to certain roles or positions, but leadership exists on every level of life. I want you to understand it. I want you to hear that. Leadership exists on every level of life. It exists in families, businesses, churches, communities. Leadership is influence. Write that down. Leadership is influence, and every person has influence over someone, over somebody. The question is not whether you are leading. The question is how well you are leading, because you are leading somebody. Somebody is observing your life and they are taking excerpts therefrom to assist in their decisions, dreams, goals, ambitions. So after 23 years of service in the best branch, United States Air Force, if I had to summarize leadership in one statement, it would be this. As I prepare to close today's episode, I would sum it up. I would summarize leadership in this one statement. Leadership is servitude at its highest level. It is servitude at its highest level. True leadership is not about authority. For you dictators out there, true leadership is not about authority. It's about responsibility. It's about protecting the mission and empowering the people entrusted to your care. Well, I thank you for tuning in today for this personal episode as I shared with you from my own experience. If this episode helped you think differently, take 15 seconds and leave a review. That simple step helps this message reach more people who need empowerment. Won't you do that for me? And then again, follow me on Instagram and YouTube at IEmpowerLives. Visit IEmpowerLives.online and feel free to email any questions or comments about today's episode, or if you have suggestions about future episodes, email me at admin@IEmpowerLives.online. And don't forget to order my 2 new transformative workbook manuals that are available right now. Go to my website, IEmpowerLives.online, and order Forged for Valor, the making of a kingdom warrior, and Refined for Dominion, the Proverbs 31 Woman's Training Manual. They're more than workbooks. They are your personal guides to transformation. I don't know what's wrong with my mouth today, getting tongue-tied. But these books are your personal guides to transformation, alignment, and dominion. So go to the website, IEmpowerLives.online/bookstore. It'll get you there quicker, and you can purchase your copy today. All right. Until our next episode, remember, a changed life is the consequence of an empowered mind. I love you. Be empowered.
Thank you for tuning in to another empowering episode of Empower Your Thinking. Remember, a changed life is the consequence of an empowered mind. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast for more inspiring content that fuels your journey to unlock your full potential. And for daily empowerment, follow host C.T. Johnson on Instagram at IEmpowerLives. Join us next week as we continue this voyage of self-discovery, uncovering the keys to a more empowered and fulfilled life.